She had always known her life in the palace was a privileged one, but she never imagined it could be snatched away so suddenly. From the moment she was born, she was groomed to be a perfect princess, trained in etiquette, diplomacy, and the finer arts. The palace walls were her entire world, sheltering her from the harsh realities that existed beyond its gates. But all that changed on the fateful day when her father, the king, summoned her to the throne room. She remembered the somber expressions on the faces of the royal advisors as she entered, their eyes downcast and their lips pressed into tight lines. Her father's voice was heavy with regret as he delivered the news that would forever alter the course of her life. "My dear child," he had said, "circumstances beyond our control have forced us to make a difficult decision. For reasons of state, you must be sent out of the palace, to live among the common folk." She had protested, of course, her mind reeling with confusion and disbelief. How could they expect her, a princess born and raised in opulence, to survive in the outside world? But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The decision had been made, and there was no room for negotiation. Within a matter of days, her life as she knew it was over. She was stripped of her finery, her jewels, and her title, left with nothing but the simple clothes on her back and a small pouch of coins. The palace guards escorted her to the gates, and with a heavy heart, she stepped out into the unknown. The world beyond the palace walls was like nothing she had ever experienced. The bustling streets, the cacophony of sounds, the smells of exotic spices and smoke, it was all so overwhelming. She found herself lost and disoriented, a stranger in a land she had only read about in books. In those early days, she struggled to adapt. Simple tasks that others took for granted, like finding food and shelter, were monumental challenges for her. She quickly learned the harsh realities of poverty, sleeping in alleyways and begging for scraps of food just to survive. But through her struggles, she discovered an inner strength she never knew she possessed. She was determined to prove that she was more than just a pampered princess. With each passing day, she grew more resilient, more resourceful, and more attuned to the ways of the common people. It wasn't long before she found herself drawn to the plight of those less fortunate than herself. She witnessed the injustices and hardships endured by the poor and downtrodden, and her heart ached for them. She realized that her privileged upbringing had blinded her to the suffering that existed in the world, and she vowed to do something about it. Using the skills she had learned in the palace, she began to organize and rally the people. She spoke eloquently of equality and justice, her words igniting a fire in the hearts of those who had been oppressed for far too long. Slowly but surely, a movement began to take shape, with her at the helm. As her influence grew, so too did the attention of those in power. The authorities saw her as a threat to the established order, and they moved swiftly to try to silence her. But she was undeterred, her determination fueled by the belief that she was fighting for a righteous cause. The climax came when she led a peaceful protest through the streets, demanding change and reform. Thousands marched beside her, their voices united in a chorus of defiance. But the authorities responded with brutal force, unleashing their soldiers upon the unarmed protesters. In the chaos that ensued, she found herself at the forefront of the battle, shielding those around her from harm. She fought with a ferocity born of desperation, her once delicate hands now calloused and bruised from the struggle. And then, in a moment that would forever etch itself into the collective memory of the people, she stood tall and defiant, her voice ringing out like a clarion call for justice. "We will not be silenced," she cried, her words echoing through the streets. "Our voices will be heard, our demands will be met, or we will tear down the very foundations of this unjust system." From that day forward, she became a beacon of hope for the oppressed, a symbol of resistance against tyranny. Her name was whispered in hushed tones, spoken with reverence and awe by those who dared to dream of a better world. And though the road ahead was long and arduous, filled with setbacks and sacrifices, she never wavered in her resolve. For she had been forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by the struggles she had endured since being sent out of the palace all those years ago. No longer was she the sheltered princess, blind to the suffering of others. She was a warrior, a champion of the people, and her legacy would forever be etched into the annals of history.